Hello, Illinois. It's nice to see everybody. We were just talking before the webinar about how many people had registered. So we're really excited to talk to you today about college access and success for youth with experience in foster care. My name is Carrie Ward, and I'm director of Fostering Success Michigan, which is a statewide initiative focused on college access and success in Michigan. And Brina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here. It's nice to see you all. My name is Brina Williams. My pronouns are they, them. I am Carrie's intern with Fostering Success Michigan, and I am currently doing the Advanced Standing MSW program at Western Michigan University. And I'm also here as the resident youth with experience with foster care today.
Brina says resident youth, but I will say that Brina is the expert here in this space. I am a professional, but I'm a learner. And Brina with lived experience is our expert in the room. I'd love to know who else is in the room. It's really helpful to see in the chat that where folks are from. You can use your reaction button or just raise your hand. Do I have any advisors, college advisors in the room? How about trio? Any trio folks? I'm like scrolling through all the names here. Student success. Anybody with student success? Good. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And counselors. Any counselors? You're like, I wear all the hats. I know a lot of us do. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. So let me pull up the PowerPoint quick. It's helpful just to kind of know who's in the room. I think our goal for today too is that we have a lot of information to share with you, but we want definitely for you to be able to ask questions. Just know that we've got a lot of information in the PowerPoint, so you might be asking questions about things that we'll talk about soon. But feel free to ask questions in the chat. We want to make this an engaging experience. So the results from today. So after today, you will have an increased understanding of obstacles related to college access and success for youth with experience in foster care. You're also going to have some good ideas about best practices in supporting students on your campus or whatever your role is. And then you're going to have some increased knowledge of resources available to youth in Illinois. So I'm kind of an expert at the resources available in Michigan, but Brina and I dove deep into the resources available in Illinois. So we'll be able to share some of those things with you too. Our agenda today is we're going to give you an overview of outcomes of child welfare and education. So I have another question for you, and I'd love for you to share in the chat. I'm just going to pull up the chat so I can see what you say. Does anybody, like if you're thinking about your knowledge related to foster care, can you share in the chat, like, would you say you're an expert? Would you say you're a novice? Would you say, I know a little bit about it? That would be really helpful. So I just kind of see like, has anybody ever heard of foster care? What's it all about? Definitely novice. Okay. Novice. A little bit. Okay. I have a foster parent of a teen who transitioned. Oh, somebody's an expert. Awesome. We have an expert in the room. A little bit. Okay. Okay. Great. And then my next question is, in your role, have you ever interfaced with a young person with experience in foster care? So have you ever been providing services or helping students and then had a student disclose that they were in foster care? Yes. Okay, good. Okay, so we've got some experience. Okay, good. Okay, awesome. So what we're going to do is provide you some context about what it's like for our young people to navigate the education system. I'm going to share Michigan's story, which is Fostering Success Michigan, which has been in existence since about 2012. So that's key. Like, I really want you to keep in mind that we're going to give you a lot of information today, but I've been doing this work for about 8 years and FSM's been in existence for 10. So don't feel like all the things that we tell you, you have to get done right now in order to support students. It's definitely a process. We're going to give you an overview of Illinois resources. We will say that we are not experts at Illinois resources, but we've taken the resources that Michigan has and kind of like looked for similar resources in Illinois. So that will help you as you deal with students or help students navigate post-secondary. And then we'll also share with you tips for increasing student success. Okay, so before we really dive in deep, I want to mention something about person first language. So this field is relatively new, and when it first started, a lot of people were saying the term foster youth. And when you're writing a grant, it's much shorter to say foster youth, or when you're communicating. But what we really want to use is person first language. We want to say a student or a young person with experience in foster care, because the experience of foster care doesn't necessarily define them. If you read Brina's bio, you'll see that Brina has a whole lot of experience, and then at the very end, it says also an alumni of foster care. It's just an additional thing that that rounds out an experience of expertise and lived experience. Brina, is there anything that you want to add to that?
Oh, no, I just put it in the chat, but yep, we are people first. I think that's true for most marginalized and oppressed people in communities and populations. So harping on that.
Yes. And it can be like it's a little bit of a learning curve to say it, right? Like student with experience in foster care, student with experience in foster care. But really that's important thing that you do to actually have respect for our students.
Mhm.
So, what is foster care? I'm not going to read this whole slide, but you will get a copy of the slides. So basically, foster care is when a young person is removed from their home because of abuse or neglect and placed under the state's purview. So, like the state is, in essence, the parent of the young person. They can go into a licensed foster care home. So, with people that they've never met before, they may reside with a relative or fictive kin. They could also go into a residential facility, and then depending on their age, they may go into an independent living placement. The whole goal of foster care is really reunification. So reunifying the young person with their family, and then providing the family skills and support so that everybody is safe and healthy. However, there is definitely intersectionality and a disproportionate representation of people of color, LGBTQ youth, and those living in poverty represented within the foster care system. So as you're thinking about your work with these students, just know that that those things will come up. So aging out of foster care is another term that you'll hear that really has the impact of that is that the young person comes of age without being reunified or adopted. So they're coming of age just simply being independent and an independent adult. In Illinois, you have extended foster care until the age of 21. And so, what that means is students can continue within the foster care system and keep their case open while residing in a foster care home, a group care, or independent living setting. And they often can get some financial resources for that. Um, but they're also usually required to be working or going to school in order to access those resources. Brina, do you have any input or anything additional that you'd like to add about the whole aging out of foster care idea?
Um, no, not particularly because I didn't have that experience. So just for knowledge background base, I was in foster care for a year when I was a baby, and then again for a year and a half when I was in high school. And my experience was mostly with fictive kin placements, and then when I was in high school for the second time with licensed foster families. So I was reunified with my mom, so I didn't have this experience of aging out of care. But I do know in Michigan, the equivalent of extended foster care, we have what we call YVAC, or young adult voluntary foster care, which mimics this extended foster care that you have here in Illinois.
So I want to touch on education outcomes for our young people. So in Illinois, the high school graduation rate for a young person who has experienced foster care is 50%, compared to 80% of the general population. That information is available on your Illinois State Board of Education website. And I'll say that 50% line is relative to the national rate too. So nationally, that's pretty typical. In Michigan, our graduation rate is 40%. So you're beating us by 10%. Post-secondary outcomes. So this is nationally without support. Although 84% of young people aspire to attend college, only about 20% get there. And then about 3 to 11% graduate with a degree without support. So that's again, like we have different sorts of campus-based support programs in Michigan and also across the country. And we found that the graduation rates are higher with support. And we'll talk a little bit about what that support looks like, but just know that without support, that's basically the rate. I see somebody did raise their hand, and I'm just going to quick look at the chat to see if you can add that question there. One new message.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, I had to quick grab my microphone. Yeah, no, I just wondered that statistic, 3 to 11% complete a degree. Can you flip back to that screen?
Sure. Oops, boy, I'm jumping right ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so 3 to 11% graduate with a degree, but they didn't get like the foster care support that they should have gotten. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
How
Yes.
about, do you have any idea about the are these bachelor's degrees? Because sometimes I've heard the statistic in reference to bachelor's degrees, but I'm curious about the rate for also certificate or shorter term completion programs.
I would say that oh, sorry, go ahead, Raina.
Oh, I actually was really recently doing some research on this according to just doing a project based on like the educational training voucher. And according to NFYI, so the National Foster Youth Institute's recent, as of last year's kind of statistics and webpage and research that they keep on their website, 2 to 6% are 2-year degrees and certificate programs. And actually, this is a little bit of an outdated statistic. Apparently, it's only between 3 to like 6% or so who graduate from a 4-year degree or from a 4-year degree. So it's actually a little lower than it was in 2005 without support.
So much.
Yeah.
It is really hard to track too. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but like actually identifying students and then tracking them, it's not something that's traditionally like data that's traditionally gathered. So that's been challenging too. And
I'll see if I find that and put that in the like a link to that webpage.
Yeah, that's great. And the other thing about the statement is 3 to 11% graduate with a degree without support. Is there like a statistic for what percentage graduate with support?
Yes. So in the CETA Scholars Program, I think that our graduates are up to like 60 or 70% graduation rate. It really depends on the campus-based support program. And so we are seeing success rates much higher at campuses that provide those supports.
Awesome. Thank you so much for clarifying.
So when thinking about the high school graduation rate and also the college success rates, access and success rates, the question is why, right? So the child welfare system is focused on safety and permanence, not on education. And so that plays a big part. Children in foster care move around a lot, which leads to educational disruption. And sometimes they have behavioral problems or, like they're going through traumatic difficulties and being moved around. And so that can actually cause problems with falling academically behind. And then also definitely that trauma piece. So as like that trauma awareness and being focused on how trauma affects school success is really important and should be kind of woven in through this whole presentation as you think about what it would be like to maybe experience trauma in your home of origin, but then the traumatic experience of foster care itself. Like that's a whole thing. This is often to a really like an unseen population. So we weren't even really tracking our high school outcomes until I think 2016, until under ESSA, states started to have to report like education outcomes or high school graduation rates for this population under the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is national uh, legislation. And then also just thinking about systems, right? So like our traditional post-secondary systems aren't set up to meet the needs of these young people. There's an assumption that people are arriving on campuses with like family support, and these students are not arriving that way. Not only that, but they're having to navigate like this child welfare system, as well as a post-secondary system that's not prepared to help them thrive. So it's very difficult for a young person as they move like through K through 12 and then into higher education to not face disruptions in that educational trajectory. So you'll see like a lot of stopping out, and what it will look like is the students will just disappear, like they'll just stop out, because a lot of times they're not really apt to like reach out and ask for help. They're overwhelmed, they're trying to pay their rent, their car broke down, and they don't have money for books. So I'm just not going to go to class anymore, right? So Brina, would you like to add anything to that?
Mm, I don't think I have anything additional to say other than reiterating just the tremendous amount of stress that these young people can be under, and emphasizing the fact that oftentimes there is no sort of like family or support system that they're coming into college or beyond with. Um, and so I'm super excited to get to like all of the stuff about the campus-based support programs because it just makes such a difference, I think.
And I did see a question in the chat about identifying students. We will get to that because that is a very, very common question. So overall challenges and obstacles to post-secondary access and success. So our students are much more likely to experience homelessness, food insecurity, mental health issues related to the trauma that they've already experienced, underemployment, lack of social and network connections. That's just what Brina had mentioned. Transportation. So I always pause on this one, like at least in Michigan, there's a bazillion steps that you have to go through in order to get your driver's license. A lot of our young people don't have somebody who can like, bank driving hours in a car and be covered in insurance, right? So they're turning 18. They've never driven a car before. Then they have to go take this driving test and then try to like, actually drive. Like how much pressure is that? A ton. And then life skills gaps. So thinking about all of the privileges that people with robust family systems or supportive adult systems experience in life skills, like how do I go to a job interview? How do I talk to a professor if I didn't get my stuff done because my car broke down and I had to scramble around to try to get a ride? Those types of things are really important aspects of ways to support the students because they're going to arrive on campus like with some gaps in life skills. Anything that you'd like to share, Brina, about this slide? Okay, cool. So I want to talk a little bit about Fostering Success Michigan, which is my organization. Again, we're a statewide initiative that is based in collective impact framework. So what that means is like our goal is really to bring together all of the professionals that touch the lives of young people and create a holistic pipeline of support for young people as they move through education. So what that means is like your foster care workers, your courts, your nonprofit organizations that help with basic needs, and then also your campus-based support programs across the state or points of contact at different campuses who support students. There needs to be communication amongst all of these folks so that everybody knows about the resources that exist and so that they can help students work through those resources in an efficient way. And I'm going to just dive a little bit more into this. So my organization was started because In 2012, there was a program called the Seed of Scholars program that was starting at Western Michigan University. Campus-based support was kind of just starting as a topic. And we had about 5 campuses that noticed what we were doing to support youth with experience in foster care. And they were like, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And so Fostering Success Michigan was born really to create like this pipeline of support of different professionals. And what we needed to do is try to figure out like who needs to be in this room, who needs to be in communication with each other so that we're not all working in silos on the same problem. There's also like a ongoing theme that so we're a hub of experts, right? So FSM is in an expert organization, but we bring together experts in financial aid, in child welfare, in post-secondary. And so as we invite professionals to the network, like you don't have to be an expert on everything that we say, like everything foster care, but you do need to know like what resources exist in your network. So we'll talk a little bit about developing your network too. So currently, like in the beginning, like I said, there were about 5 campuses across the state that had supports for youth with experience in foster care. They were like trying to develop that. And over the years, we've built to about 30 campuses in Michigan that have on-campus supports or champions for our young people. And Brina's going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. But the overall goal is really to for FSM to help bring these campuses together to share best practices and talk about ways that they can navigate systems to support students. Brina, did I miss anything there?
Not anything that we won't get to later.
Okay. I know this is really hard to see, but I'm just because Brina and I were like, we can't even read what it says. You'll see, I'm gonna give a handout later that will help you develop your network. But this is kind of like how we started to design our network as Fostering Success Michigan started. So we put Fostering Success Michigan at the center. And we started thinking about all the people that kind of touch the that touch the lives of young people. So like we have post-secondary education professionals, we have youth and alumni of care. So again, like when you're thinking of your network, you always want to make sure that students just aren't at the table, like they own the table, right? Like they're the experts. And so you always want to bring them in to your program planning. You also have like caregivers and mentors or your supportive adults, community organizations, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but thinking about those challenges to post-secondary access and success. I said housing, right? So I would want to know who in my community helps people with housing. Like I need to identify that in order to support my students. Or food insecurity, where are my food banks? You also have like middle and high school counselors, educators. So under the Every Student Succeeds Act, there are points of contact at school districts all across your state. They have to have it. So there are people that wear those hats that are directly working with young people who will be aging out and graduating. You want to connect with those folks because that's going to be like driving them towards your campus, right? What else do I have here? Department of Health and Human Services. So I think you guys call it Department of Children and Families. So your caseworkers, your social workers, and on and on. So basically like thinking about all of the different pieces that touch the lives of your young people, that's your network. And so FSM built a statewide network based on bringing together all of these folks so that we're all kind of in communication together and working together toward that holistic pipeline. Brina, do you want to take it from here? Talk about campus.
So this is just a quick snapshot of all of the campus-based programs that we have over the state of Michigan. So there's 30 in total. So these are either campus-based support programs or champions. So someone identified in the financial aid sector at college, or someone who's like willing to act as the liaison between them and other supports such as the FSM network. So I personally have experience at Lansing Community College. So their program is called Fostering Stars, and that's where I started before transferring to Western in 2020, the height of the pandemic, and then graduated as a CETA scholar. So we can probably move on to the next slide if you want. So focusing a little bit on what these campus-based support programs do, they really offer all the things that not having family support or support system offers these young people. They offer on-site services, so such as coaching, food and housing assistance, scholarships, and even more. So some of these include like the designated coaching. They're usually at least one coach in rotation that's available 24/7. And they really help with the gambit of things that at least I know for myself and most other youth don't know how to do coming into college. So like how to even apply to college, how to enroll in classes, how to apply for scholarships, how to buy books. I can attribute my success in college to having a coach, because even being in grad school, I actually still meet with my coach, having graduated from the program as an undergrad student. And he still helps me with all of these things. So there's also plenty of mentorship opportunities, so connecting and building that peer support, getting to meet students who have similar experiences is a big opportunity. That also includes like leadership and advocacy. So being able to share your story, similar to like a platform like this, being a part of webinars, being able to do presentations. I know there's a lot of good like travel opportunities. The CETA Scholars recently took like 10 students, I believe, to California for a leadership conference. So there's opportunities like that comes up. There's connection to those campus champions, so those who are in the financial aid sectors and building those connections on campus to help make sure that these students are taken care of. There's pre-college outreach and recruitment. And then the biggest piece right here that we have with a little star is financial resources. And this is going to differ from campus to campus. So Lansing Community College, being a community college, did not have its own set foundation of money or scholarship that it was awarding students, but the CETA Scholars, which could be considered the golden standard in Michigan and maybe even nationally, does have their own scholarship that they're able to award students that they can then put towards tuition and books and housing and room and board and all that good jazz. So that is like the golden goose. And I apologize if you can hear noise in the background. My dog is being very vocal today.
Oh, thank you so much, Brina. I will say too that so don't be overwhelmed by this slide, because in order to have campus-based support or on-site support, you don't have to have all these things. This is kind of like Brina said, the golden goose, right? Most of the campuses in Michigan are somewhere on a continuum. So on the smaller campuses, it might be one point of contact who's a champion for youth, who knows how to help that young person navigate the campus system and the community system. And then other campuses, like the larger campuses, like University of Michigan or Western Michigan University, might have full-blown programming with multiple coaches and designated space, and then a lot more robust programming. So it really depends. But just knowing that all of them started with just one person on campus that was willing to be designated champion and actually start to increase support on campus. So we'll talk to you about that too. I want to mention here too about financial aid champions and designated campus champions. So these are other points of contact that FSM has developed aside from just the campus coaches. So we worked with our Department of Treasury to identify financial aid champions on campuses at about 60 campuses across the state who are willing to be points of contact for any sort of financial issues that our students have. So we have all these different financial things that are available to our students, but they're complicated and accessing and confusing, and it will be for Illinois too, I promise. And so what we do is we have our financial aid champions as points of contact, so students can just reach out to them directly, because they'll be able to help them navigate those kind of complex resources. The financial aid champions also work in partnership with any other champions on campus, which may be in admissions, or it may be in student success, or counseling, or trio. Like anybody else who would interface with these students would be considered a champion, because that what you're doing is committing to basically being aware of the resources, the obstacles that our students face, and then also the resources that are available. I see something in chat, and I just want to make sure that I am addressing it. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute for a second while I'm looking at this one. Yes. So that question on the application is a very, very good start in identifying students. So I love that some campuses in Illinois are actually like identifying students on the application. That was like a whole thing when FSM started, where we recommended that to a bunch of campuses and really fought to get that question on the application. Any other questions that anybody has before I go on? So I feel like I've been talking a lot. Brina, do you want to talk about the FSM website?
Sure. So this is a snapshot of when you access the Fostering Success Michigan webpage, this is what you open it up to. And this is a lot, right? So up here at the top, there's some quick links. I would recommend, if you do a visit, checking out the network and the national map. These are snapshots of both the state of Michigan and then nationally, some of the partners that FSM has. And it's just a really good hub for information. We also have down here, it's broken down into middle school, high school, college, which is good as professionals to be able to access resources specific to the age range that you're working with. We also have it broken down into something that we call the 7 life domains. So education, housing, health, relationships, identity, life skills, and finance and employment. So those opening up will access resources that are specific to those life domains. We also have some toolkits, which I believe there's a snapshot in the later slide focusing on one of these toolkits. The child welfare for education, or I cannot see that. Educators, sorry. Educators and professionals toolkit is going to be really helpful again in working with students who are in high school and who are planning or wanting to pursue post-secondary education or trying to make that transition. So there's also the search bar too. So looking for anything specific, there's just a lot of information on the website, and I'd recommend looking at it.
So the website itself is like really, it's got a lot of Michigan focus, but it's a nationally known website and accessed all across the country, just for some of the resources. So like, feel free to like steal the setup, right? So if you were gonna make a financial aid toolkit for youth in Illinois, you could actually look at that and see how you might change it so that it would be appropriate for your young people. But a lot of the content within the website will also be helpful information to you as you move forward and you're learning about this population. This is one of our most popular resources that Brina mentioned, our college application toolkit. It basically just walks students through how to apply for college. Another common question is, so students sometimes struggle with the college application fee. I know there's a lot of community colleges on here, so that might not be relevant, but that's also a thing to consider, like as you have the application process, consider waiving fees for students. This is the network maps that Brina had mentioned. So we created a network map so that folks could see where resources were located within their various communities. So feel free to kind of play around with that. You'll see how we orient different resources. And now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about building your network and building your engagement and support systems of students. So This visual gives you an idea of the kind of the three layers of support that students need in order to access and persist in college. The first interface that you're probably going to have with students is financial. That's often how like your students end up in your office or talking to you because they're struggling with paying for books, or they're having difficulty with navigating paying for college, or having difficulty with basic necessities. So just know that like students are going to probably arrive at your office in like it'll be a transactional relationship, right? Like they're going to come to you for something, it's a transaction, but the goal is that you're wanting to create a relationship with that student so that it builds over time, so that you can actually continue to support them beyond that transactional financial relationship. Financial resources are super important for our students in order to help them succeed, because the overall goal is to get them through college without having to pay for it and have like tons of debt. And I'll talk a little bit about that too. But just know like that's kind of the starting point. The second part is on campus resources. So you'd have like folks in your financial aid office that are available to support students. But the truth is that students need support all over campus. So what you want to do is try to create a culture on campus so that people have in various departments have an awareness of the obstacles that these students interface, and then also have an idea of how to support those students. So knowing about the different resources on campus that are available related to basic needs, and then also knowing about resources within the community that are available to people who may have, difficulty with housing or food insecurity. So that's the third part, right? So that's your holistic network of support. So it's all of those things tied together. And the tricky part is this, especially with engaging students. They're going to start with financial resources and engage that way, but you actually have to move backwards as you're developing your support. So you want to start with your holistic network of support in your community, and you want to find out about what basic resources are available to young people. And then you want to develop some on-campus resources and some understanding of the financial things that are available to them. And then you want to reach out to your students and say, we have supports available. Because what happens a lot is like people get really, really distracted about how do we engage students or how do we identify students? They identify the students, they reach out, but the student then comes to them and says, okay, you have support. Well, I can't pay for my books. My car just broke down. I'm about to get evicted and I need help because I'm going to step out. And then like, you're just like, what? Like, oh, okay. So like, it's really important to prepare yourself as far as like the community resources that are available, and also establishing kind of like that on-campus support before reaching out to students. So just remember that it's the students will start here and move through the system, but you need to kind of go the opposite way. Brina, is there anything that I'm missing there?
I don't think there's anything missing. I do know that the Seed of Scholars program at Western does have a similar sort of graphic that they use that they call the 3 C's, which consist of cash, coaching, and community. But it's the same sort of setup. The Seed of Scholars also use the 7 life domains that I mentioned earlier when taking a look at FSN's webpage. And really, if you don't start with that holistic network of support, you're going to be able to help out with the financial resource, but then everything else is going to suffer. And there's got to be some sort of balance between all those in order for our young people to be successful in their post-secondary education.
Any questions before I move ahead? I'm going to delve a little deeper in the details, but feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions. I see something in the chat. Let me see. Oh, somebody just added that. Thanks, Brittany, for adding the website. I love that you have champions. Yes. Okay. So we're going to start backwards, right? With the holistic network of support. So like I said, I created like a document that gives you an overview of some resources that are available in Illinois, specifically that I thought would be really helpful for you. There's like statewide resources, there's financial resources for paying for college, and then there's some resources at the bottom that are national. As I move through these slides, I'm going to highlight some of those resources from that sheet. So the holistic network of support, like I said before, it really includes like all the professionals and systems that are involved with youth with experience in foster care. So like you're going to want to think about your partnership with the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. I'm sure as somebody who works at a community college is like, what? I have to talk to social workers? I don't understand that. I usually don't have to do that. But it looks like most of the college resources or financial resources that are available begin with the Department of Children and Family Services. So just know that like if the financial resources are originating there, they also need to know that you're developing campus support. And then you need to know how to access the resources, and they need to know how to steer students toward campuses with the supports, right? So that both of you are working toward increasing access. The one really great resource that I found is the Spider database. It looks like something similar to the FSM network map in that you can put in your area, like you just click on, you go to the Spider database and then you click on whatever resource it is you're looking for, or look for it in the search bar, and it'll show you different resources in your area for some basic need stuff. I say that saying I've never used it before. So, like statewide or like things that are developed by the state are sometimes a little bit more complicated to work than they originally are laid out to be. But it's really important to think about, like, especially at your community colleges, like where are your basic needs partners? We also have like, let's talk a little bit about students arriving on campus as the semester starts. One of the things that many of our campuses do is partner with like local churches and stuff to get donations for like people moving into the dorms, or like start of the school year academic supplies, and then they have that stuff available for students. So that would be like one key way of trying to figure out, okay, how can I get donations locally? Because I know these students are having difficulty, with laundry detergent, with bedding, with, just general move-in stuff. And then connect with those places and then try to provide some solid things for students as they're starting out. That would be the first holistic network of support resource that I would share with you. And I see some things in chat, but I don't know if I'm missing anything. Hold on. Nope. Okay. Okay. Whoops. Okay, on-campus resources. So I've said over and over that it's not just like about one person on campus, right? It's really that you want to have identified multiple people in multiple departments of who students would be interfacing with. So the financial aid is a given, admission, student success trio, Office of Diversity Inclusion. The idea is to really bring people together and meet, and I say train champions on the barriers, but really just talking about like how the experience of foster care affects the students on your campus, and then the resources that your campus might be able to provide to them. And also like letting them know you don't have to be experts, you just need to be committed to assisting these students, helping them navigate these things. Another really great resource that I found was this Post-Secondary Pathways for Former Foster Care Youth. It was a website that was through the Office of Community College Research and Leadership at the University of Illinois, and it had some really good resources in it about the different kinds of resources that are available to young people in college, and then with some recommendations on how to integrate that into your work with students. Any questions so far? Brina, anything additional that you would say? You're like, I'm keeping my mute on in case my dog's making noise again. Okay, so this is the fun part. So like I said, Brina and I really went through like some of the financial resources that are available in Illinois based on our knowledge of resources that are available in Michigan. And so my caveat to this slide is prepare to be confused. I will also say that in Michigan, like there's a lot of different resources that are available, but I still get confused. And I've been doing this for 8 years. Brina still gets confused and they're like, they've navigated it. So I think that like just keeping in mind that states are setting up these resources, but actually like not, they don't have the infrastructure to carry them out in a way that's effective. So knowing that you're going to have to step in and really try to figure out how to be a system navigator is key. So it looks like, so when students, your first line of identifying students on campus is question 53 on the FAFSA, which is have you ever been in foster care on or after your 13th birthday? That is really how most of I recommend like the campuses in Michigan try to partner with their financial aid office to try to figure out who those students are. Some campuses, financial aid offices will play ball, some will not, right? Like some are really into FERPA and they're like, we can't share that information with you. In which case, I would say for whoever's like trying to be the champion, ask them if they would be willing to like do a poll of all those students that check 53 and then like send those students an email on your behalf saying, I offer support to students, right? So there's like different workarounds there. But that's a key question is question 53. What you'll also find out is it's not the most accurate representation too, because you have a lot of students who check yes on 53, but actually like weren't in foster care. So that's a little bit of a tricky thing. It looks like in your state that your students will be Pell eligible and able to qualify as independent, just like anywhere else. But also looks like the question 53 triggers this MAP program, Illinois Monetary Award Program, that looks like it's available at specific campuses. So I included a link here if you want to look a little bit more into that, but those like the independent status and then the MAP program would be triggered by the FAFSA. So those are two important resources to know about. And it almost sounds like the monetary award program is available to lots of different students, lots of different populations. Chafee. So Chafee, the Education Training Voucher Program, is a federal program that states pull down funding for to help youth who are working toward their education or technical degrees or whatever. States can do Chafee kind of any way they want. It looks different in every state. And so in your state, it's $5,000 per year from age 18 to 26, but no more than 5 years for tuition, fees, supplies, books. Okay, so this is again, like it gets confusing because a lot of times like students have to access certain funding streams before a certain age, like before the age of 21 in order to access it at all. So if you have a 23-year-old that's never accessed this, they won't be eligible, which is so frustrating. And then a lot of times it takes our students longer to graduate, right? So there's a cap on the amount of time that they can utilize their Chafee funding. But it looks like this is how you utilize, or at least in Illinois, you utilize Chafee funding in two different ways. There's a program called Youth in College Placement, which provides $1,500 a month toward a room and board. That's really important because our students really struggle with housing. And then there's also something called a Youth in Scholarship Tuition Waiver, which looks like you have a complete tuition waiver in your state for youth. So I'm going to dive a little bit into this here. So when I was looking for resources, all I could truly find were tip sheets. And so you too have access to these really helpful tip sheets that will tell you all these crazy eligibility requirements and stuff. And we were like, as we were looking, we were like, I don't understand. Like, is the tip sheet for young people? Is the tip sheet for professionals? Is it for caseworkers? What I think is most of these resources begin at your health or your Department of Children and Families. So caseworkers have to identify or like let students know that these exist, but are they doing that? I do not know. So it's important that you know about them too, so that you can ask a student if, like they come to you, then you're like, are you still in foster care? Okay. You're in extended foster care. Do you get the youth in college funding? No, I have no idea what that is. Okay, so then the next step is, okay, who's your worker? Right? And so then you like try to figure out how you can help the young people access these funds. Again, we have, let me see if I can get back to my PowerPoint now that I did that. We have another tip sheet for the tuition waiver. So just to talk a little bit about tuition waivers, Michigan does not have a tuition waiver. Basically, there's about 30 states across the country that have basically waived the fees of college for youth who have experience in foster care, which sounds like an awesome idea. But a lot of times there's difficulty accessing this. And then also sometimes legislators think if they throw money at it, that the problem's solved. Remember our circle, the youth need financial support, but they also need on-campus resources and community resources, right? So your tuition waiver looks like it originates again from the Department of Children and Families, but I can't really tell. But again, just know that like this is available and there's things that it covers and things that it doesn't cover, and that you should try to see, like, as you move into this work, try to figure out how to navigate this stuff. And that would look like two things. You could reach out to your local Department of Children and Families, talk to them, or on a statewide level, like FSM has partnerships with like statewide. We have an educational point of contact who can help us navigate this kind of stuff. And then we talk about like trying to figure out how to best design processes so it's not so confusing for the individuals. Okay, hold on just a second. Let me get back to the PowerPoint. Any questions about that? Like, I know it's like, I'm like, these are your resources. Good luck.
So, Carrie, I think you kind of unintentionally shared a good piece there, that you as an individual who have been working in this environment for several years, digging into the resources, it's even been confusing for you to navigate and figure out what's available, who do we talk to, where do we go. So just imagine how confusing it is for students who are trying to find what's available to them. And I know I have a bit of experience working in the foster care system in Illinois, and it is hard to navigate. And so I think that's kind of a key takeaway, is that it really is, it takes a village, right? It really is, these students need our support. We need to continue to educate ourselves. We need to continue to have, whether we're an instructor, counselor, advisor, continue to have those conversations, and really dive in when able to, into looking at what's available, what that looks like as far as navigating for the students. Because a lot of times if they have to take 20 steps to get somewhere, I mean, life happens and they may get frustrated and not have time and say, you know what, it's just not even worth it. So just acknowledging that it's a crazy roadmap to have to navigate for a lot.
Thank you. Yes. And Michigan's addressed that with the Fostering Success Michigan piece. So again, like states will come up with these funding streams and these resources, but then they actually don't have an infrastructure to carry out good communication with the young people plus good communication with the professionals. So one of my roles is working with all the partners. So like doing presentations for our Michigan Department of Education, doing partners with case or doing presentations with caseworkers, like all those different things. This resource highlight, this Foster Progress Financial Aid Guide, was really helpful to me in looking through. So it like kind of explains the programs that are available for young people. And then has some links and stuff. I mean, it almost looks like when Brina and I were looking at it, there were a lot of like link to MDHHS for or not Department of Children and Families Form XYZ, right? And it looks like the caseworker has to fill out a lot of the stuff. But again, like Brittany said, it's hard work. So if a caseworker has 30 to 40 kids on their caseload and not all of them are in foster care, or I mean, not all of them are of college age, they may have like, that might not even be on their radar. Like they may have gotten a training 6 years ago when they started as a worker that there's financial resources that exist for college. But if you're not working with older youth, that's not on their radar. So they're not necessarily going to connect the young people. So the overall goal, the long-term goal is to create like resources on campus and have an understanding of those resources, but also build like some sort of backbone type thing like Fostering Success Michigan that will provide that infrastructure and communication. Rena, I think you are up.
We have thrown a lot of information at you. And if you're like, oh my gosh, when is this going to be over? Well, this is the most, we're close to the end, I promise. And this is the most important action steps that you can take away from this and moving forward and being able to continue educating yourself and support these young people. So we have these all laid out for you. So the first step, of course, is that student identification piece. So question 53 on the FAFSA, looking at who's receiving or who's tried to apply for ETV, and then that tuition waiver piece, partnering with that financial aid office at your local colleges and campuses. The second step, have a clear idea of the supports available to students. So a lot of these tip sheets that we've been showing you and the resources that are in this PowerPoint are a really fantastic place to start. So just educating yourself and familiarizing yourself with the resources that are available to youth, because they're not going to know. We're just, laying it out. They're not going to know. If caseworkers aren't sharing it, they aren't going to know. Understanding that they have been let down by multiple systems and professionals and may not respond positively to your support is going to be a big one. Young people have learned how to fend for themselves and how to depend on themselves, and building that rapport with them is going to be a key component in having those transformative relationships versus transactional that Carrie was mentioning earlier. Do with, not for. So while educating yourself and partnering with these youth, also educating them and help them build some of these life skills and navigating post-secondary education is going to help them much more than if you just do everything for them. Act as partners. They should be leading, like as Carrie mentioned earlier, it's not just having youth at the table, but they are the table. I've also heard it, this isn't the big league, we are the league. So representing that, this is their life, and that they should be taking control over it, and it should be a partnership. Considering your role carefully. In Michigan, we use a coaching framework and model to support students. So we've talked a little bit about that, utilizing the 3 C's. So cash, community, and coaching, that same slide that Carrie was showing earlier. So starting with that holistic network of support, also utilizing something called the 7 life domains, which could be just Googled and looked up from the Fostering Success Coach Institute. Is something that a lot of the campus-based support programs in Michigan follow when supporting students. So, and that is linked right down here at the bottom.
We'll mention too, there's so the Fostering Success Coaching Institute is a specialized training place, and they have an upcoming summit next week, and registration is still open. So if you're interested in learning more, go to the Fostering Success Coaching Institute and consider signing up for the summit next week. It's on the 15th and the 16th. You don't have to have had any coach training in order to attend, but like the whole thing is really going to be about working with students with experience in foster care, and it'll give you some real like solid skills. They also offer like a big training that I recommend to all of my campuses in Michigan, when like new people come in, to go through like this coach model training that gives you a whole bunch of skills, again, specialized skills in working with students. There you go.
I also just want to mention that that summit that Carrie mentioned, both of us will be there next week if you'd like to see our beautiful faces once again. So a few more action steps that we have here. Sharing your knowledge of the challenges that these students are facing with your schools and campus administration. After educating yourself, educating others. That is going to be so important in sharing in the wealth of knowledge in order to create that village that we've been talking about to support these students. Identify basic need resources in your community and establish partnerships with them, especially housing, especially housing when school's not in session. So like over the summer, over Christmas break, over spring break, that's going to be super important. And not every campus program or tuition waiver program has like funds that house these students, or dedicated housing on campus or whatever. So partnering with those in your community is going to be super important. I know Carrie also mentioned earlier that some programs have community partners that will donate stuff. I know something that the Seed of Scholars program does is the cohort that's coming in at the year, they have welcome packs. So community partners will donate, basic hygiene needs, cleaning supplies, laundry detergent, bedding, just a plethora of resources that these, youth don't have coming in. So find someone on your campus to be a champion for youth with experience in foster care. So like we mentioned earlier, can be in financial resources or financial aid office. It can be those who are working with TRIO, but finding someone who's willing to learn about the resources that are available to youth and help those youth navigate them. So it just starts with one person. Each of the campuses that are in Michigan that have established program just started with one person. So. And then finally, reach out to students to check in with them, provide guidance, and link them to these resources, advocating for them according to their specific needs. So just building those rapport with students is going to be such a huge, just a huge part of it. Again, these youth have, they've been let down by the system, multiple systems that have tried to help them, and reaching out and kind of building those rapport and building trust and being like, yes, you can, I'm here to support you, is going to really be, I think, the biggest key in all of this.
So before we go on to like questions, I do want to say, I want to show you a resource that I created. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out how to navigate my computer. Okay, so I created a resource as a handout, and I think Brittany probably already passed it out to you. But this is similar to the network the network activity, or the network map that I showed you earlier about Fostering Success Michigan. What I would like basically suggest is that you print this off and you think about where you're at. So this would be like you and where you're at within the campus. You might be in financial aid, you might be in student services, you might be a community member. And then think about how you can develop your network with contacts and experts in each of these domains. So, and we used to do this activity in person when we would do like regional convenings. So we'd pass these out and then we'd have everybody in the room basically just like go around and meet each other and like share contact information. This is really helpful because it's like a tool that you have in your back pocket when a student comes to you and says, I'm having difficulty with housing, or I need a referral to some sort of counselor, or I need help to try to get my driver's license. So the activity has an overall like spindle here but then it also it has name, organization, and contact information that you can also fill in on your own. And this is just a good activity. Like you could even do it within your campus, right? Like you could bring together a bunch of people on your campus who are interested in supporting these students. And then you could go through this together. Like, how do we have these resources on our campus? Who's the point of contact? Do we have these resources in our community? Who would we reach out to? What organization? So I give you that in hopes that that will be helpful. And now I'm just going to open it up. I see that there's chat. I keep saying I see that there's chat. Oh, here we go. Okay, and that's Brittany dropping things in. So feel free to unmute yourself, share your camera, and then ask any questions that that you have. We'd love to just have a conversation with you about some of the questions that you have, or some of the things rattling around in your brain after we've talked about all this. Or share in the chat too if you're shy. I'm just looking through one message. Nobody has any questions or thoughts? Quiet bunch.
I'll speak up.
Sure.
So just sharing thoughts. So I'm a manager of a TRIO Upward Bound program. So I work with high school students who are college bound. And it makes me feel bad sometimes, actually. I feel kind of inadequate when I work with our students in foster care, because I don't understand. I don't know all of the options available to them as they move forward in going to college. And it is such a complicated process, like we were talking about. I have a general understanding, but I don't know all the resources, and I don't know how to navigate all of it. So I feel like I can't always thoroughly explain all of their options to them. And I wish there was a better way for me to learn that, I guess. So what I'm learning here, I guess, is that's more something that I need to go through their caseworker or direct them to their caseworker. I'm just kind of at a loss with that, because that's been a difficulty for me in my position in helping them navigate that, because it is so hard for me to navigate.
Yes. So I just want to normalize for anybody on here, like, it is difficult and very confusing. I'll give you an example. So Brina and I were running a pilot project called the Change Makers, and we had a bunch of students who we were convening and teaching about the resources available. And we found out that 2 of the students should have been receiving their ETV and weren't. And it took, what did I say, Brina? 10 professionals from 4 organizations to get it together to get these students their $5,000 ETV so that they could pay for their books. It was crazy. I mean, it was like me, it was our contact at our Department of Health and Human Services, that's the, the agency, right? It was Samaritas who facilitates the ETV. And then it was like, I think there were 2 people from TRIO, 2 people from financial aid. I mean, it was crazy. And it took it was silly. It was the young person had gone to like one of those transitional summer programs, and they had given her a grade, and it was affecting her overall GPA. So they weren't giving her ETV because her overall grade was too low. But it was just a transitional program. So she wasn't even really officially a student yet. So we had to fight to try to get that grade off. I say that because the systems are not set up in a friendly way. And I still get confused, really confused, about who's eligible, who's not eligible. I think the most important thing is that you're willing to partner with the student and to explore. So it's really, whenever I talk to a student, I'm like, okay, were you in foster care on or after your 13th birthday? Sometimes they're like, yeah, and then sometimes they weren't, whatever. Okay, well, you should qualify for this. Let's check into that. Are you getting this? Okay, well, So, but you're in voluntary foster care now, right? Yep. Okay. So who's your caseworker? They might be able to give you a contact name. Well, I talked to Miss So and so. Okay. So like, and especially where Illinois is at, like it's a mess because you guys don't have, like, my other responses, get together with a whole bunch of other people in financial aid and take one of those resources that and the tip sheets and figure out how to make a toolkit so that everybody can use it, right? But that's like also a big lift. So it's either you're working on your own independently, trying to weed through these resources, or you're working together and trying to develop some sort of navigation that makes sense on the post-secondary side. Also keeping in mind that the caseworkers have no idea also how to navigate the post-secondary side. So like it's natural for these things to be so confusing and complicated and overwhelming, but it's really about partnering with the students. And and also there's an opportunity too when the students come to you that you can normalize too with them, like, yeah, I'm confused. Like, I don't blame you for being confused. Let's see what kind of resources we can get you. And the bottom line is that they're going to be showing up with, well, I need help buying my books. So, okay, if we can't figure out how to use this ETV situation, are there any other resources on campus or anything else that we can do to help the student buy their books? Because the more you help, the more that you'll learn how to be like a good system navigator and the more contacts that you'll make in your network. Does that make sense? Yeah. And I still have that feeling, like, because when you start talking, I was like, I felt the heavy, and I still have that feeling. It's hard. It's hard work. Brina, and also you're probably wearing 50 hats. Like, like it's just one thing like one thing I'm trying to do to help students, but I have your trio. So I think you have like 100 students on your caseload, right? Yeah. Brina, is there any additional?
I kind of stole what I was gonna say, and that was just being willing to be confused with students. And again, going back to like building that rapport and partnering with them and acknowledging like this is confusing, but I'm going to be with you, trying to figure this out. And in dealing with caseworkers and people from financial aid, and understanding that there's going to be 10 or more people that you're going to have to be in contact with to get this figured out. But understanding like and telling that youth, I'm going to be here with you every step of the way until we get this figured out. I think it's going to be the biggest thing you can do in a situation like that, because it's confusing, and it's confusing for everybody involved.
I'm glad that you said that, and that's a really good point to make. And I will try to remember that at least I can remind them that they're not in it alone.
Yeah.
And that, as difficult and as confusing as it may be, I'm in it with them.
Yeah.
So I will navigate it by their side.
Thank you. I'm seeing some comments in the chat. Somebody wants tips on how to help students get comfortable with letting their experiences be known so they do not miss out on available resources. That is a super tough one because our students don't like to ask for help. And the tricky thing is the resources all have these age limits on it. So even if they disclose to you that they were in foster care, they could have been adopted at 12. And then you're like, oh, sorry, the resources aren't for you. Like, I hate that, right? Like, you have a student who actually discloses and actually needs support, but then the resources aren't in alignment. I would say we've said a couple times during this presentation that students are the experts, and you want to make sure that they're not only at the table, but that they know that they own the table. But also, as you start developing like any sort of supports, you also want to prepare them for how to share their story or their experiences in a safe way. So it's not just about like, oh, you're in foster care, come and sit at our table and tell us what you think about, because they'll disclose, like maybe in a way that they're not prepared for, or they'll overshare. And so just making sure that they know what their role is, which is you're an expert in the room. You're, you know, you're the person who has to struggle through all these systems and navigate these resources that are designed for you. Tell us how we can best support you and help you. Um, and it's really about, I think, developing those transformational relationships. So it's, you know, students, again, going to be sitting in front of you because they need financial support. But as you engage deeper with them and they come to find you as a person who is willing to work with them, that's going to grow the relationship in ways that you'll be able to support them better in the longer term. Brina, do you have a good answer for this question?
I don't, especially since I'm unfamiliar with Illinois. Like initially there's, a million webinars that have been produced about strategic sharing and like how to share your story. So I'd maybe start there. I don't know if there in Illinois is a specific program that youth might be a part of that might help cultivate like an advocacy bone. I know in Michigan we have something called Michigan Youth Opportunities Initiative, which is it's a program through our MDHS, and it's for youth with experience in foster care between the ages of 14 and 23, who either have experience in foster care or who are currently in foster care. And that, like, I attribute that to helping me develop my advocacy bone, and connecting me with a lot of opportunities, and like to have that chance to get comfortable with my story and how to share it and all that jazz. So I'm not sure if there's something like that in Illinois, but start with something maybe like strategic sharing, how to share your story, like again, like what Carrie mentioned, reiterating that they're the expert, and just being like a support to them. I am trying to, shameless plug, I'm trying to find an article I wrote about oversharing, that had some advice for professionals that I wrote this past year for the imprint, that I was trying to find to put in the chat. But yeah,
Send that to you afterward.
that's a tough one.
And like, yeah, getting students to disclose in general, it's difficult. Somebody says warm handoffs are so important. Yes, they really are. And that's where your network comes in. So building those network connections both on campus and within the community, those are truly the first steps, because the student's going to arrive with more than just general academic difficulties, right? Like they actually don't have, we call it family privilege, right? So when you grow up in a family, you have this supportive network that exists, that you can fail safely. You can fail a class, you can spend your student refund check on clothes and not have any money for books, and then talk to, you have somebody to go to and be like, oh, I overspent. Our students don't have that. So like thinking of those types of things, and having a warm handoff. Somebody sent me a direct message about, are there statistics available as to the success of various foster care placements, foster home, relative, residential, independent living? I've never actually looked that up before, but I've heard extraneously. I mean, I would say like residential placements and residential placements or institutionalized placements, bad, right? Bad. It's not helpful. We're actually moving toward trying to eradicate those, I think, nationally. But I would also say like relative placement, or, some sort of kinship placement is also really, helpful, because the student or the young person still attached to their family of origin. But I would say any sort of foster care experience is traumatic in essence. So,
also name, I'd imagine it, and I don't know for sure, but I'd imagine if it's in Michigan, we just have a general lack of placements or places for teens to go. And I'd imagine that's similar over the course of the United States. So just more places for older youth and teens who are about to be, or who are in that transitionary period, is like so necessary.
shared their article in the chat. It's awesome. What other questions or comments do you have? Do you have a better sense of like, what would be your next step moving into this work or leaning into this work? Or do you just feel totally confused? And either is okay. Definitely better prepared. Okay.
So I will say, when I met with Carrie a couple of times, I have some experience working with the foster care system, and talking to Carrie and having those back and forth conversations with her, I was instantly like, let's start a Fostering Success Illinois. And I just wanted to do all of the things, but it can be overwhelming. And so I think just from our end, as far as ICSPS, providing more professional development, educating myself on, experience in foster care and the post-secondary system, and kind of helping to navigate that as well. And then with you all, really kind of just chunking away at it within your institutions and your programs, just continuing to get that education and knowledge base, building those relationships with the students within your program, being that sounding board for them, knowing that they have a support, and creating that community, and really just taking it one step at a time, I think eventually will make a big impact for our students.
I'm so glad you said that, because what came up for me is when we first started doing this work, we had our very first statewide summit, and the theme of that summit was one thing. And we even like had these little engraved rocks that we like a little pet rock, and it said one thing on it. And so we asked people to be like, what's your one thing? What's your one thing that you're going to do? It might just be like to look at the Fostering Success Michigan website at the financial aid toolkit and see how we've set that up. It might be to read one of the resources, or to print the resources off and file it, or to share the resources with somebody. It's really just about one thing. And then like keeping that conversation going, or even writing in your planner for next month, what's my one thing, right? And then like just little bits. I did like, as I was looking through the slides, like I remember coming in, I started my role at Fostering Success Michigan as a graduate assistant and intern. And I remember sitting at the table for the first time and like being completely overwhelmed, like I'm never going to get this. And even Brina, when they started their internship with FSM, Brina was overwhelmed with some of the stuff too. Like, what? And, Brina and I had actually been colleagues before they became my intern. So, I mean, I just think that like, it's normal to feel confused, and it's really about people like you that care about the work that moves the work forward. So thank you for being here. I'm excited to have met all of you.
Yeah, and I just would like to second that. Thank you for being here. Like, this was a really good first step for, I think, all of you. And it doesn't sound like you were forced to be here, which means that you care about supporting these youth. And we need more people who care. So it's good that I'm glad to see as many people as there are being here. So thank you.
Any other questions or anything like that before we close? Cool. I'll hand it back over to Brittany.
Yeah, so Carrie and Brina, thank you both for being here today and taking time to just chat with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it. I think you've definitely got us thinking and just really wanting to dive in and find our one thing and just kind of move forward a step at a time. So Dina, I'm going to hand it over to you really quickly if you just want to share about the next learning renewal convening in March.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie and Brina, for being here, Brittany for helping to organize this, and all of you for attending. We're really happy to be continuing on another important topic in next month's learning renewal. convening, which will discuss food insecurity and resources for folks experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity. You'll be getting a link for that if you haven't already, some reminders about it. So please sign up for that as well. I know that that's been something in some conversations I've had with institutions that's, weighing heavily on folks' mind in terms of resources students need. So know that that is coming up. That is March 8th. We always do them from 10:30 to noon. So we hope you will all be available to join us for that. And again, thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, everyone.